I had always been a dreamer. Ever since I could remember, my mind was filled with ambitions, plans, and dreams of a life where I made a difference in the world. My name is Mary, and my dream was simple but powerful. I wanted to become a journalist. I was obsessed with storytelling, capturing the essence of people's lives, uncovering hidden truths, and contributing something meaningful to society. The idea of working in magazine publishing felt like the perfect avenue to fulfill this passion. I thrived in the world of writing and eagerly stayed updated with the latest trends. With that goal in mind, I studied journalism and media in college, putting in long hours to refine my skills. When I graduated, I was ready to conquer the world. But as with most dreams, reality wasn't quite what I expected. My first jobs were with small publications, companies that weren't widely known, but that didn't bother me. I was doing what I loved, and that was enough for me at the time. I enjoyed the challenge of starting small, and each article I wrote brought me one step closer to my bigger goal. I knew success wasn't instant, and I was prepared to work hard. A few years into my career, when I was 31, life took an unexpected turn. I met Jerry. He wasn't just any guy. He was smart, kind, and supportive. We connected immediately, and before long, we fell in love. Jerry came from a wealthy family that ran a very successful business. His father, Willie, was the patriarch, and Jerry worked closely with him, helping to manage their vast empire. Jerry and I quickly became serious, and our relationship grew stronger with each passing day. There was only one dark cloud on the horizon: Jerry's mother, Nicole. From the first moment we met, it was clear she didn't approve of me. Nicole was a woman of stature, always impeccably dressed, always carrying herself with an air of superiority. She believed Jerry deserved someone from a similar background, someone who came from wealth, and she never missed an opportunity to remind me of this. In her eyes, I was just a journalist, someone who didn't fit into the image she had for her son's future. At first, Nicole's constant criticisms were like tiny daggers, small but painful. She would make remarks about my career in journalism, suggesting it wasn't a real profession. "A journalist? That's not something to be proud of," she would say with a dismissive wave of her hand. Her disapproval weighed on me more than I cared to admit. It hurt to be judged by someone who barely knew me, and yet I felt powerless to change her opinion. But Jerry was my rock through all of this. Whenever his mother made a snide comment, he stood by me. "Mom, Mary's work is important. She's good at what she does," he would say, defending me every time. And Willie, Jerry's father, was equally supportive. He didn't share Nicole's harsh judgment, often stepping in to calm things down whenever her remarks crossed a line. I appreciated their support, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Nicole's disdain for me ran deeper than she let on. As time passed, I became more resilient. I tried not to let Nicole's harsh words get to me, focusing instead on my relationship with Jerry and my growing career. I kept telling myself that if I could make it through each encounter with her, I'd be stronger for it. But that became more difficult when Willie had to leave for an extended business trip overseas. Nicole didn't want to stay alone, and before I could really think it through, Jerry had invited her to move in with us until his father returned. At first, I convinced myself that I could handle it. After all, family is important, and I believed that keeping the peace was the right thing to do. But soon after Nicole moved in, it became clear that living under the same roof was going to be a lot harder than I'd anticipated. The criticisms I had once been able to brush off now became a daily barrage of insults. No matter what I did, Nicole found fault with it. "You're doing that wrong, Mary," she would say when I cooked dinner, or, "I can't believe Jerry married someone so inadequate," when we talked about work. Her words were relentless, and it felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells. I tried to remain calm, reminding myself that this was temporary. Willie would return soon, and Nicole would leave. But the stress began to weigh on me. Meanwhile, at work, things were heating up. I had been handed a huge project, leading the redesign of a major section of the magazine. It was the most significant opportunity of my career so far, and the pressure to succeed was enormous. I worked long hours, often staying up late into the night, tweaking designs and perfecting layouts. A successful launch would almost guarantee a promotion, something I had been working toward for years. The night before the big presentation, I was exhausted, but hopeful. I had poured everything into this project, and it had to go well. As I sat on the couch, logically nervously discussing my concerns with Jerry, Nicole overheard us. She walked into the living room and, without being asked, inserted herself into the conversation. "Mary, I couldn't help but overhear. But honestly, you're probably going to fail tomorrow," she said bluntly. "I doubt you have the skills to pull this off. You should just quit and focus on being a housewife." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I held it back. "Nicole, I really don't have time for this right now," I said, trying to remain calm. "I'm focused on my work." She looked at me, her eyes cold and dismissive. "I can't believe Jerry married a journalist. You'll never be good enough for him." That was it. I had tolerated her jabs for long enough. "You've overstepped, Nicole," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You don't get to insult me like that." Nicole was taken aback. She turned to Jerry, expecting him to take her side, but he didn't. "Mom, Mary's just defending herself. You've been way out of line," he said, his voice calm but resolute. For the first time, I saw something change in Nicole's expression. It was a mix of shock and anger. "You've turned my son against me," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You'll regret this, Mary." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too tired, too stressed, and too focused on the presentation the next morning. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, wondering how things had escalated so quickly. But my mind was preoccupied with my work, not Nicole's threats. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, ready to finalize my presentation. But when I opened my laptop, my heart stopped. All of my files were gone. My entire desktop had been wiped clean. Panic set in as I frantically searched through my folders, my emails, deleted. Even the trash was empty. It was as if my laptop had been completely reset overnight. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I had backed up the files to my email, but everything was gone. How could this have happened? I rushed to my boss, explaining the situation, hoping he would understand. But his reaction was far from sympathetic. He looked at me with disappointment, telling me that I had been irresponsible and unprofessional. Worse, he had already lined up a backup presenter, someone ready to take over in case I failed. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, was gone. There was no chance for recovery. My promotion was out of reach, and I was left humiliated. I walked out of the office, tears streaming down my face, feeling utterly defeated. When I got home, Jerry was still there. He had taken the day off to support me, sensing that something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, concern etched across his face. "There was no presentation," I whispered, choking back sobs. "Everything was deleted. My laptop, it's all gone." Jerry's face fell. He pulled me into his arms as I cried, unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. "How did it happen?" he asked, his voice filled with confusion. "I don't know," I replied, still shaking. "I backed everything up, but even the backups are gone." As I explained the details, a thought crept into my mind, a thought I had been trying to push away. Could Nicole have been involved? It seemed impossible, but something about her behavior, her words, her smug satisfaction when I had failed. It all seemed too coincidental. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I needed proof. If Nicole had sabotaged my laptop, I had to know. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went online and ordered a hidden camera, one that looked like a smoke detector. I installed it in my office, hoping to catch any suspicious activity. A few days later, I baited Nicole, mentioning that I had been given another chance to present my work. Her eyes lit up with curiosity. "Oh? Another chance?" she said, her tone laced with skepticism. "Yes," I replied, carefully watching her reaction. "It could lead to a raise if I do well." Nicole smirked, her expression unreadable. Let's see what happens tomorrow then, she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. That night, I reviewed the footage from the hidden camera. As the video played, my heart pounded in my chest. I watched as Nicole crept into my office in the middle of the night. She sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. My hands trembled as I saw her fingers move across the keyboard, deleting files, resetting my system. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She had done it. She had sabotaged my presentation. I showed the footage to Jerry the next morning. His face turned pale as he watched the video. "We have to confront her," he said, his voice shaking with anger. When Nicole came down for breakfast, Jerry wasted no time. "Mom, we know what you did," he said, his voice cold and steady. Nicole looked at him, Zrenia feigning innocence. "What are you talking about?" "We caught you on camera, Mom. You deleted Mary's files," Jerry said, showing her the footage. Nicole's face twisted in anger. "You were spying on me?" she snapped. "You sabotaged her work, and now you're trying to deflect," Jerry replied, his voice rising. "You need to leave, Mom. You can't stay here anymore." Nicole's face flushed with rage. "You've turned my son against me," she hissed. "You'll regret this." But Jerry didn't back down. "You're leaving today," he said firmly. Nicole packed her things and left the house that afternoon, throwing one last glare my way before walking out the door. The days after Nicole's departure were strange. The house felt quieter, more peaceful, but there was a lingering tension. My job, the one I had worked so hard for, was in ruins. I had lost my chance at a promotion, and the thought of going back to work was unbearable. Eventually, I resigned. I couldn't stay there, not after what had happened. I needed time to recover, to rebuild. Jerry stood by me every step of the way, encouraging me to take the time I needed. He helped me explore new opportunities, and with his support, I began to find my footing again. It wasn't long before I landed a new job, one that was even better than the last. I became the chief editor at a renowned magazine, a position that felt like a dream come true. The work was demanding, but I thrived on the challenge. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my life again. Nicole was no longer a presence in our lives. Willie stayed in touch, and Jerry maintained a professional relationship with his father, but we didn't hear from her. I didn't mind. I had moved on, and I was determined not to let her sabotage or negativity hold me back anymore. Months later, Jerry and I were invited to a major company event. It was a high-profile gathering, and we both dressed our best. When we arrived, we spotted Willie and Nicole across the room. They waved us over, and we exchanged greetings. Nicole's eyes scanned me critically, but I didn't flinch. I was no longer the insecure woman she had tried to tear down. I was stronger now. "So, still unemployed?" Nicole sneered. I smiled. "Actually, I'm the chief editor at a new magazine," I replied, watching her face carefully. Just then, the CEO took the stage and called my name. I was being recognized for my work, praised for my leadership and innovative ideas. As I stepped up to the stage, the room erupted in applause. Nicole sat silently, her face flushed with embarrassment. After the speech, Jerry and I returned to the table, where Willie congratulated me warmly. Nicole, however, remained quiet, her eyes filled with bitterness. For the first time, I felt truly free from her influence. I had proven my worth not just to her but to myself. As we left the event that night, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with Jerry by my side, I knew we could face anything. Together, we had weathered the storm, and now we were ready to embrace whatever the future held.